Today I would like to show my cultural study. The title is Boundary Line of the Life, Belonging or Not Belonging to the Culture. It is important for study to me because I would like to show about Japanese situation, what's going on under cultural socialism. And its study comes from Confucianism. And of course, if people take Confucianism more right way, it should be better. But if take other interpretation, it makes people's lives so difficult. People want to live better lives. How to create them is related on cultural ideas. In Asia, many people have tendency to rely on human wisdom and to prepare everything with the wisdom because of their concept of gods. Then, if some things do not work well, some people should be blamed because they intentionally or unintentionally tend to think human lives should be perfect and things work well if people are perfect, and many of them think it would be possible because of their God's conception. Better lives come from stable social conditions. For stable social conditions, many people have to build up harmony. Generally, harmony means no conflict among people. For harmony, there are ideas of collectivism. People should resemble or do what their culture allows. What are the idea comes from? It is Confucianism. Detailed explanation of Confucianism is later of this presentation. To feel comfortable or secured is with similar people. What kind of resemblance do they seek for? People can say school, work, political parties, or hobbies. Yet, what are connected matters among them? It is thoughts. The fundamental idea of similarities comes from their thoughts, like what people think good or bad. The extreme way of this becomes cultural socialism. Japan has such a trait. Because of less individuality and less flexibility, they think about unauthentic for the culture of their society if they are hard to belong to and it disturbs their harmony. They believe need to be authentic in their culture and eager to belong to. However, why do they have serious motivation for belonging? There are two reasons. First, as a general belief, no one can live for oneself. The second is they have practiced such a way through collectivistic manners. Culture of their society actually has influence of characteristics guidance on what people should think and act. Then, if people do not have hope to exist in such a society, people choose to commit suicide. Original philosophical principle of Confucianism is humaneness and its practice. Humaneness should exist without conflicts, and Confucianism respects harmonic society. What people believe as Confucianism has been added by ideas of later philosophers. One of prominent philosophers was Mencius. He told human beings are good by birth, and they are alike. At the same time, he mentioned about authorities as a principle. Evil rulers need to be excluded from the society when they misgovern the nation. In other words, if they can hold their authorities longer, they are sure to be good rulers with humaneness and morality. Then this theory also applied to common people, as bad entities should not belong to the society if the society prefers to keep good humaneness and morality under harmonic atmosphere. To Japan, this Confucian doctrine came 3rd to 4th century. Even though it has received rational characteristics, Confucian has been used as fundamental political and moral teaching. Factually, some current scholars categorize Japan as Confucian-affected culture. People have tried to build up harmonic society by Confucian doctrine. If people rightly use Confucian principle, the society may work well. However, they have tried to create harmony no matter how. their interpretation of moral humaneness laws became less individual and less flexible. For example, it is difficult to have political decisions with fulfilled requests of variety opinions when they do not have enough time. Then they prefer to have resembling people for conflict avoidance, because in Confucianism people are originally good by birth and have likeness. Why are they particular about resemblance and harmony? It comes from the stuff of life. Generally, Western societies are categorized as hunting culture and Asian society is farming. Although for large scale of hunting, people need to have harmonic teamwork. They can also do by individuals if they choose small scales. However, for farming, especially rice field, it is troublesome if they aim to harvest enough quantity of rice by individuals. Without harmony, people of Asian farming societies would be hard to survive until current mechanized generations. Then I would like to take 3 points from Confucianism for this presentation. Creating admirable models, having approvals, obeying their authorities. People are promoted to become their society admirable models for establishing social harmony. Becoming resemble entities through admirable models may not produce conflicting atmosphere through resembling feeling and opinions. For them, collectives are better than individuals. This restraining oneself can explain by oppressing oneself and restricting own expression. Kupperman describes Confucian gentlemen should not be open-mindedness because self-expression will introduce spreading out their feelings and opinions. It leads to uncontrollable atmosphere and conflict. It is dangerous for their society. In their situation is a strategic meeting, it is time-consuming and cannot make drastic, serious decisions. The situation throws the meeting into turmoil. Moreover, if they cannot fix the turmoil, their uncontrollable atmosphere will be bigger and larger. It produces conflict, and society cannot keep moral humaneness anymore. For them, it is better to avoid conflict than to fix conflict, because in conflicts people have hardship to restrain themselves. It is not gentlemanlike. Then they strive for how to avoid conflict by collective ways. By resemblance, people do not have different feelings and opinions, which cannot cause any faction or clique. In Japan, this manner also reverts into survival status. They need to be and have what the society admires for belonging to the culture of their society. In fact, there are people in Japan strive to achieve what the society treats as good manners, such as to get licensed for jobs, to study English or other Asian languages, if these matters are from their hearts or somehow their necessities. It is their lives and should be fine. Notwithstanding, a great number of them possibly do through seeking the information or ranking. Besides, people in Confucian culture are normally uneasy to explain own opinions and previously mentioned. Unfortunately, members of them cannot explain their own opinions to act but the majority because of fear for non-belonging. After all, if someone has similarity to their majority, he or she can survive in the society. However, if not, he or she needs to adjust oneself or stays away from the mainstream culture. Even though people in Confucian culture strive for being socially admirable models, it is difficult to examine their achieved levels by themselves. If they are socially unacceptable entities, unfortunately, it is clear to understand by negative attitude from the majority, such as neglect and exclusion, as non-belonging. When people have such negative situations, if they calmly examine and survey that, the causal reasons might be just characteristic difference. and they will have possibility to reconcile one another. Nevertheless, since they have been instilled good likeness by birth and the necessity of belonging, difference is hard to accept by great numbers of people, and them treated unacceptable entities pursue or approvals. If they cannot wipe out their disapproval, they have deep anxiety or upset and eventually lose hope for their future. Because of collectivism, it is a boundary line for their lives, belonging or not belonging. They care about what the other people mention, whether having approvals or not. This explanation sounds overstating, yet an example in Japan, there are some certain age categories for social approvals: to be a full-time employee, to get married, or to have children. Even though such age categories have been shifting with some social movements, it is not so different to feel non-belonging to the culture of their society when people cannot catch up with lifetime activities of the majority. By Confucianism, human beings are alike each other originally. Then to be different among the society seems to be unacceptable and to treat as disapproval, and in an extreme case, they will be treated as negative factors for disturbing their harmony. As previously mentioned, numbers of people in Asia, they prefer to rely on human wisdom, since they do not have concept of the Almighty Perfect God, which is the foundation of Christianity. Simultaneously, they need to take responsibilities almost always, even unexpected matters. If they fail to take responsibilities, they are treated as imperfect ones compared with Confucian perfect figure. Kupperman cited as one of perfect figures when Confucius depicted his attaining enlightenment. Quote, "At 70, I could follow the desires of my heart without transgressing the right." It means people in Confucian culture need to strive to be their higher admirable models and need to have social approvals. Such trained Confucian people will be perfect and can be also perfect authorities with humaneness and righteousness. Therefore, Confucian ideas encourage people to train themselves, becoming the socially acceptable figures with affirmation. After people have trained themselves, they will be perfect, like what Confucius mentioned. Trained people may have no transgressing the right anymore and can say what they desire. Although this ideology seems to be reduced because of globalization, and it introduces various kinds of ideologies, it still works in Japan. They might not believe just their authority truly, yet they have tendency to believe culture authorized matters or information. Besides, this ideology includes other meaning. People have resemblance by nature, but through environment and practices, their characteristics are unlike each other. If they have some particular training, they can be alike and achieve resembling respectable or prominent characteristics with higher abilities. Then, if perfect authorities say something, it should be authentic for the culture of the society, and unauthentic people should follow that. Some famous or socially admirable people are regarded as authorities through ideological interpretation from Confucianism, as if more authentic and perfect people can only have authorities. Then, when such authorities mention something, other unauthorized people are prone to follow without enough examination because of cultural socialism. They eager to be culturally admirable and approval figures. These authentic and perfect include popular movies, winners of the athletic competitions, current fashions, or some popular entities, which impress on people since Prosperous and successful atmosphere are also treated as evidence. Moreover, with resemblance ideology, a multitude of people believe without deep consideration that they can be like them by imitating what such authorities are doing. Many people tend to belong to such authentic and perfect people and avoid belonging to unauthentic people. Their main meaning of unauthentic people has individual originality or characteristic differences from the majority, including physical or mental traits, but such unauthentic entities are often treated as a necessity to the culture of their society, since many of them believe environmental influences on people. They have tendency to exclude such authentic entities from their environments in order to avoid catalytic negative influences. It is cultural socialism. Without individuality, people seek what the majority of the culture say admirable. Labeled unauthentic people are sometimes regarded as unsuitable and unnecessary entities, such as not being culturally admirable models, not having cultural approvals, and not obeying their cultural authorities. In extreme cases, they are cut off from the culture of their society. How about such unauthentic people's end? Because of collectivism society, they will struggle with belonging. Some of them face the boundary line of life or death and commit suicide. There are statistics of suicide rate of population in each country. Why do people choose to commit suicide even though there are multifarious causes? Mostly people feel themselves useless and valueless with painful matters and have no hope for their future. In many cases, if they have hope and keep motivation for life, there can be still some ways to find, no matter who they are. If societies have collectivistic culture, their ratio of suicide is higher because the causes are not only personal factors but also social ones. About social factors, people are usually hard to handle by themselves, even though many people in individualistic culture can choose life more since their life criteria are not other people in their societies. For these consequences, people can see 2 points of situations from health issues. With illness, to have a job and to keep a job are hard. Illness itself causes physical or mental suffering, and with their suffering, people cannot concentrate what they do. Moreover, illness causes another factor at work. It is unproductiveness. Some kinds of diseases are chronic sudden attacks, which make people not know how much they can manage their assigned work. Some other diseases require limitation at work, which make people not allowed to do even some important matters in their workplaces. Sick people have difficulty to belong to the majority at work, the culture of their workplace, with their suffering from illness and non-belonging to the culture and working society. They think themselves unsuitable and unuseful. Furthermore, their distress feeling leads to think themselves useless and valueless because, after all, they cannot join with many kinds of social matters. An idea of cultural socialism prefers to do the same things with their majority. If not, it is unauthentic. They lose hope for future. Therefore, eventually numbers of them commit suicide. For this case study, although asthma seems not to be the worst causal disease of suicide, Asthma patients are applicable examples because of their authentic figures. Unfortunately, general people misunderstand asthma patients by their intangible and uncertain disease characteristics. They think as just coughing, only struggling, or noisy breathing. Nevertheless, in reality, it is a respiratory disorder. In other words, patients have difficulty in explanation and a feeling of constriction in the chest. The symptom of asthma attacks is sudden wheezes and suffocated feeling by chronic inflammation of one's respiratory tract. There are generally three levels of asthma characteristics: slight, moderate, and refractory. Of course, many of them have proper medication and try to control it under advice of medical personnel. However, like even trained athletes fall ill. Controlling asthma patients get asthma attacks. Besides, once they get the attacks, numbers of them are hard to expect the time of recovery. Moreover, the outside of asthma patients look normal when they are sitting and stay calm. Yet, especially more than moderate level, when they trot, go upstairs or sing, their asthma suddenly gets worse. Since asthma patients try to avoid heavy choked conditions, they need to decline when they asked about some activities, even at their work. Nevertheless, because their outside is just normal, many non-asthma people misunderstand and unfortunately doubt, as if they tell lies or unauthentic. Furthermore, such declining social activities from asthma patients leads non-asthma patients and non-asthma people not to include their activities anymore. More clearly said, slight level asthma patients can run and go upstairs, although it is not always easy. In contrast, 10% of the entire asthma patients are refractory level. They are not to be able to move, difficult to talk, and to have disturbance consciousness. When patients have sudden or heavy asthma attacks, they are at risk to die within 1 to 3 hours. In Japan, each year about 3,000 people die from suffocation. Commonly, one of authentic figures for adults in Japan is to be a regular employee. Many asthma patients have intention to work, but it is difficult because asthma characteristics. Drastically, work is commercialism. Employers need to survive in the competitive business world. They need to make elaborate plans and schedules, and their employees need to follow that. Because of clear planning, they prefer to have productive employees. Nevertheless, numbers of asthma patients cannot follow that by unscheduled absence for attending hospitals and by work limitation. It is unproductiveness. Dr. Nabe explained conditions of asthma patients and at work as overall the reason of unemployment is unscheduled absence at least more than once in a month. Then unstable conditions of respiratory dysfunctional patients make their employment difficult, and also most of the patients abandon their will to work. Even though there is special paid sick leave for obvious heavy diseases in Japan, for other diseases such as 5 days of flu, employees need to spend from their paid holidays when they need to leave their work for hospitals. Besides, compared with many Western countries, employees are not given so many holidays. For example, the first year employees can have about 11 paid holidays. It means If they need to leave for a hospital more than once in a month, their paid holidays are quickly disappeared. After that, their absences affect their income and promotion. People might think they can stay in their workplace if they have wills. Nevertheless, such attitudes are less favorable in Japanese culture. After all, sick people are only minority. If Japan had individualistic culture, asthma patients could be fine. Moreover, because of cultural socialism, what they believe authentic matters are what the majority do, and asthma patients cannot do so many because of their chronic suffocation. Therefore, numbers of asthma patients cannot belong to the culture of their society, and some of them are also mentally suffering. If they think themselves as not culturally admirable models, not having cultural approvals, not obeying their cultural authorities, and then excluded from the majority, they start to think unworthy of their society. In an extreme case, they have no hope and no future. Therefore, a great number of people in Japan commit suicide every year. How can people avoid this devastating life end? It is more individuality and flexibility that will allow people have freedom of their heart. There are some suggestions for having individuality and flexibility from social and personal sides in order to prevent suicide. Some years ago, Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare in Japan suggested in their bulletin for suicide prevention. But since culturally fixed their social systems have been practiced so many years, it is difficult to repair immediately. Nevertheless, the government mentioned important points for helping people from committing suicide. Employers will find more competent, skilled individual candidates and can discuss flexible employment. It will help not only people who are not to belong to the culture of their society, but also employers themselves. It hardly denies environmental influence on people. Nevertheless, it is not always true because people in the same culture and the same circumstances do not grow in the same way because of own characteristics in deep insights. In their characteristics belong to the culture of their society, what they do will be allowable with moral and lawful considerations. But if their characteristics do not belong to it, causes of cultural socialism, many people will hesitate to pursue their ways even morally and lawfully allowable matters. Indeed, to improve negative environments is very important at a time. People can change some things through their own minds, through individuality and flexibility. In 1965, Dr. Nakamura built up a vocational facility for disabled people in Beppu City, Japan. Later, they named as Japan Sun Industries. In that generation, people with handicaps normally stayed in hospital or homes since it was unusual if they work even though they have will to work. They have been thoroughly treated as unauthentic. Nevertheless, Dr. Nakamura introduced social integration with individuality and flexibility, and now more than 1,000 disabled people are working with about 800 non-disabled people at Japan Sun Industries and its related companies. Of course, from the beginning it was hard and almost no one believed when he asked many company presidents for establishing such a facility. Notwithstanding, eventually they could achieve a breaking through and beyond of cultural socialism. They are own authentic people. Why are resembled characteristics good? It is possible that everyone had the same idea in the world. For having real harmonic society, people need to think critically. Since everyone has different characteristics, including physical conditions, individuality and flexibility, are one of essential points so as to free own heart and to prevent suicide. Moreover, nothing is stable on the earth. People might be able to belong to some particular cultural society by making efforts or forcible manners. Nevertheless, when a new cultural group is on the rise, previous ones will decline. If so, previous majority cultures will be minority, and they might be treated as not culturally admirable models, not having cultural approvals, and not obeying the cultural authorities. In short, they are authentic entities and not to belong to their cultural society. What is real authentic? Everyone has own characteristics, and they can find better own ways. Cultural socialism is unnecessary. People will find own authentic methods and ways with individuality and flexibility.